Most leaders think that the trust is earned by the employee, but the reality is trust starts with the leader first. You can't scale if you can't let go. For years, I kept trying to find a general manager that would replace me so that I could scale our business and stop being the one that did everything. And unfortunately, I went through 4 general managers. They weren't responsible enough. They didn't do the things that I wanted them to do. They didn't have enough skill. But the truth of the matter is, there was one common denominator. I couldn't let go. I was holding on so tightly that I wouldn't allow trust to grow. And then I finally realized that trust is something that I am going to have to give before the person has proven that they're qualified. And because I finally started to trust someone to take over the responsibilities, it gave me freedom to rest again. It gave me the ability to have my freedom. And that success didn't come because the person arrived. It came because I released control. Here's the main point. If you cannot give control, it's like you are throwing a rope and hanging onto it at the same time. If you want your leader to grow, if you want people around you to take some of the responsibility off of your plate, you can't expect perfection. You can't expect it to be perfectly fast. And the problem is that we want it done our way. But control is the enemy of trust, and you're never going to be able to trust someone until you're able to let go. You have to ask yourself, are you training leaders or are you just building helpers? Because if that's the case, you are not going to scale and you're not going to find yourself freedom. When you make that decision that you're going to invest in trusting someone, what happens is they start to feel capable, valued, and responsible. When we were raising our kids, and I told you this story before, but it's a really good one. Every year for their birthday, we gave them a new responsibility. So when they turned 12, they could keep their room how they wanted. They could leave it as messy or as organized as they wanted, but I had some parameters. I said, it can't stink, it can't spill out into the rest of the house, and you can't have any dirty dishes, and there's no critters or bugs. So we tried to make sure that we set parameters with that, but also gave them responsibility, which made them feel sort of empowered because now they all of a sudden had responsibility for themselves. And every year we gave them something new that became part of that honor system of responsibility. And the same thing applies with our employees and our leaders. We want to empower them to make decisions so that they are stronger and that muscle is stronger, so that they can stand on their own 2 feet and that we're not in control of all the details. Because if you're in control of all the details, you're the bottleneck. You're creating a problem for the business to not grow and thrive. And you're not tapping into the resource of this leader that may see the world differently and have lots of solutions to problems that you could never have thought of. I had this employee that worked for us. We have a work program with one of the local high schools, and they often will send us kids that come to work for us. And this particular child had never worked a job before in his life. And I asked him to take something out of the oven, and he had a baking sheet in his hand, and he said, where should I put it? And I said, go ahead and put it on the speed racks. If you don't know what they are a rack with shelves where they can, probably 20 different places that you can put the rack in. This particular speed rack was empty. I said, go ahead and put it in the speed rack. And he goes, and he looked at the rack, and he looked at me, and he looked at the rack, and he had no self-confidence. And I was like, just put it on the rack anywhere. And he just stood there, paralyzed in fear that he was going to make the wrong decision. And then I looked at him, I said, I have full confidence that you're going to pick the right one. And he actually, after that happened, he was able to put the sheet on the rack. But then the rest of the day, he stood a little taller. And he was a little more encouraged, and he wanted to make me happy. He came to me and said, I'm going to clean up my station before I go home. And he was just absolutely encouraged because I put into him, I trust you. And the interesting thing is that when you tell someone that I trust you, it becomes their courage. And when you trust, it creates the possibility of them to become a problem solver. They suddenly believe in themselves to come up with better solutions when problems come up. When they depend on you to be the answer, you will solve all the problems for them. But when you encourage and trust them, all of a sudden they become the solution expert. Giving up control has been one of the most difficult tasks that I have gone through. We have had this business now we're coming up on our 10-year anniversary, and it wasn't until a year ago that I actually finally figured out how to let go, how to relinquish, and how to build some systems in place so that I could do that. And it was really difficult to get there. And I love what Dan Martell says, is he says, use the camera recorder method. Everything that you do, document it. Either write it down or grab your phone and record. This is what I do. This is how I do it. And this is why I do it. And then start giving it to someone else and trusting that they're going to do it correctly, that they're going to know that this is the process step by step and that they're going to execute it. It's not always easy to do. There are so many times when I felt like I was the only one. It can only be me that does it because it won't turn out right. I remember when we make homemade truffles, and I had this girl that worked for me, and we were making truffles, and I kept looking at the way that she was dipping them in chocolate, and it wasn't turning out as perfectly as I wanted it to be, and my skin was like, I don't, just stop it, just quit doing it. That's what basically I ended up telling her. I was like, I'm gonna have you go do something else because this doesn't look the way I want it to look. It can only be me that does it, and I'm just gonna have you to go do something else. And what I told her is that I don't believe in her. I told her that in my actions that she could never do it as well as I can, and that I'm the only one that can do it. And guess what? For years, I was the only one that made them. And now I'm like, I don't ever make truffles. I have staff that make all of the things that I used to make. And I'm perfectly okay with that because, like Dan Martell says, 80% of somebody else doing it is 100% awesome. And what he means when he's saying, if you can get it off of your desk and onto somebody else's, and they're handling it, and maybe they're not handling it 100% the way that you would, even if they're doing it 80% the way that you did, that's still a B. They're still getting it done, which frees you up to do all of the other things that you're amazing at. And that's the part of it that you have to understand. That's the part that you have to realize, that you have to trust your staff. You hired them. You've trained them. You picked good people. They're gonna do an amazing job, and here's how you let go. First, create clear expectations. Document, this is what I want done, this is how I want it done, and this is what I want it to look like when it's done. What does success look like for them? And how do they know when they're done? If you set a clear finish line, that will help remove anxiety for both you and for them. Also, allow imperfect progress. Like I said with Dan Martell, his 80% of somebody else doing it is 100% honest. It's okay if it's not 100% because it means you're not doing it. Also, people will develop skills over time. That young lady, if I had trusted her with the truffles and allowed her to imperfectly make them, eventually she would get it right. Eventually she would start doing it the way that I do it, and then I wouldn't have to do them all. Trust, and keep in mind that at first, when you're learning how to trust somebody, you're also not going to do it perfectly. It's going to be a muscle that you're going to have to keep working at, and you're going to have to keep pressing into, especially when you feel anxious. People wobble, and you're going to wobble, but that's okay. And finally, this is really helpful. Review the outcome, not the method. Stop micromanaging how they get there and measure the result instead. Don't tell them what the steps are to get there. Tell them where you want to see them when they get there. This is how I believe that we should end up. And I have full confidence that you're going to get us there. Remember the young man with the baking sheet. I didn't tell him, take your hands and slide the baking sheet onto the third down rack. I just said to him, I have full confidence that you're going to be able to do this. Because here's something really cool. People take ownership when they are the author of the process. Here's a framework that's similar to Dan Martell's 3-1 framework, the know framework. You teach your team how to know how to solve problems. K stands for know the real problem. Ask questions. Sometimes you have to ask several questions. Why is this happening? Well, why is that happening? Why does it continue to happen? And then narrow down the best solutions. Think of 2 or 3 things. What needs to be true so that we can figure out how to fix this problem? And then own the solution. What do you think is best? What do you want to try to make this work? I'll give you an example. We're over portioning our fries and tots in our restaurant. And my suggestion to my ordering manager was maybe we need to start weighing them, or what can we do? How can we solve this problem of over portioning? And so he went and bought a scoop. He found the perfect scoop that allows for portion control. Now, it wasn't the way that I would have solved the problem, but I looked at it and I thought, you know what? This is something that he owned. This is something that he's going to continuously train the cooking staff so that they're doing it correctly. And why would I get in the way of him being proactive in solving this problem? And so I said, yeah, I think it's an excellent solution, and let's try it, see if it works. Because W in the no framework is we win together. When we win together, it's me believing in them, allowing them to try things to see if it'll work. And then we can discuss afterwards. Did it work? What could we try differently? What needs to happen different? What happens is it reinforces ownership. It trains them to have confidence. It teaches them to have solution mind thinking, and it builds that leadership muscle. Because in the beginning, you may not be super strong. You can't lift the big hefty weights. But if you allow them to continue to grow that muscle, eventually they're going to be really strong with decision making. And you as a leader, you can sit back and just be a coach that helps them with their decision making and not the owner of all the solutions. When someone knows that you trust them, they solve problems faster, they hesitate less, they innovate more, and they begin to predict the needs of the company, which is really helpful when it comes to fertilizing that leadership development. One of my biggest problems when I was trying to give up control is that I can do it better, or I can do it faster, or if they fail, I'm the one. It's my name, it's my reputation, it's my business, it's not theirs. When they make mistakes, it looks bad on me. But the truth is these are leadership lies that we tell ourselves to stay in control. This is what we sell ourselves so that we think that we have to continue down this path of I have to do it all. But if at the end of the day, your goal is freedom, if you really want to reach that place where you don't have to be the one that solves all the problems, then you're going to have a serious conversation with yourself and allow people to make mistakes. Because growth, really honestly, it takes a lot longer right now, but putting in the reps and deciding to continue to go in this direction is going to give you freedom later. And here's a reality check. If your business breaks when you're not there, you don't have a business. You have a job with overhead. And trusting your staff, that is the bridge that takes you from being an operator to an owner. So this week, I want you to pick one task that you can give up control. One thing that you have been controlling tightly, and you're going to transfer that to someone on your leadership team or some staff member, and you're going to teach them the no framework, the know the real problem, ask several questions until you figure out what the real problem is, narrow down the best solutions. They're going to own the recommendation, and then you're going to come together and you're going to win together afterwards and decide what worked, what didn't work, what should we do differently. And when you do that, it's going to give you freedom, and you're going to tell them, I have full confidence that you're going to be able to do this. And then just make sure that you're reviewing with grace. Not like me, where I snatched back the task and said, nope, give it back to me because you're not doing it right. You have to allow them to continue to try to do this thing so that it comes off of your desk. And not blindly where you just throw it on their desk and walk away and like a time bomb, but where you're actively coaching them to get them to, even if they make mistakes, allowing them that room and that freedom to continue to grow is going to gain you so much time in the future. You cannot expect people to rise if you don't trust them to stand. So keep this in mind. Taking control feels safe, but giving control builds leaders. I'll say that again. Taking control feels safe, but giving control builds leaders. Trust is not a risk. It's a requirement if you're going to build leaders. Lead a better life, build better leaders, and trust someone enough to become one.